We mentioned cow farts and chimneys. I think you know what we are talking about. They must have something to do with greenhouse gases and trapping the thermal energy and causing warming, right? Well, here you will read where our forests went. What have we been doing to the forests? What does it mean for CO2? And what was WATT? What? About the thing about coal. We will learn the coal and what we started without necessarily knowing what we were going to end up doing, and why are there skyscrapers in the middle of the desert. How many more people a day arrive on Earth? What is happening to the population? And that your electricity comes from steam as well. Which means what? How is steam produced? By burning something. Why oil is thick and gasoline is thin, and why cows look so innocent. Well, we'll see whether we can really blame the cows and whether we can really blame all the people on the planet for the problems, and in short, we'll see what the causes of climate change are. These are complicated issues. We'll read one simple version of it just so that you know what's happening, but there are lots of political issues about this as well, so you have to be careful about pointing fingers saying you did this and you did this and so on and so forth. Okay, keeping all that in mind, let's start with forests and the wood. Ever since the last few ice ages, humans have been interfering with the climate. Until that time, only nature had an influence on the amount of CO2 in the air. But roughly 400,000 years ago, people first started to make campfires. We mastered the fire, and then we just went on making more and more fires. Can you blame them with the cold and all those wolves on the prowl? They needed fire, and it's a good thing as well, right? Fire drives so many things, but making fire sent all the carbon that was in those trees into the air as CO2. More forest fires happened too, maybe by accident, when a spark blew into a dry desert forest from in a dry forest from lightning, or maybe some were set intentionally because the prehistoric people wanted to create open plains where they could hunt wild animals more easily. Some evidence exists for this set fires by our ancestors. Whatever the case, archaeologists have found layers of charcoal in the ground that date back to the last ice age and prove that there were big forest fires at that time. Forest fires like that send a load of CO2 into the air and also destroy trees that can absorb CO2, as is happening in the 21st century in Australia and Canada and Brazil and Indonesia, the United States and other countries, and as happened in recent centuries in Europe and Asia and North America. We are all in this together. What do you think it looked like in Central and Eastern North America around 5,000 years ago? That's very recent compared to the time scales we are talking about. For a little child like you, it's still pretty long. It was all forest as far as you could see, because we had not grown in population like we are now, and we were not clearing out forests for agriculture as we do now and for building cities and so on and so forth. Look in front of you, look behind you, you look left and look right. There were trees everywhere, even in the swamps that were around back then. We have drained most of the swamps now for various purposes. There were ferns and fungi and moss growing among the trees, and beetles and mice and foxes scuttling around. There were forests where now there are schools and skate parks and supermarkets and sports stadiums and big parking lots and airports. So where did they all go? Most of the trees were used for construction. Everything you look around, the windows, the furniture, everything has wood in it. The first houses, ships, roads, they were all made from wood. People had no problem cutting down forests or burning them to the ground. Quite the opposite. In fact, the forest was dark and it was full of scary animals and mean robbers. Down with the forest, said our great 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 grandfather. For centuries, wood was the most important material for villages and cities. Even after brick houses came along, wood was still necessary. You make brick by baking clay in an oven, which you power by burning wood. The blacksmith needed wood for his fire too, and so did the baker and the glass blower, and so on and so on. Wherever big cities developed, the forests disappeared, so wealthy cities and countries had to fetch their wood from far away places, just like we bring oil from distant countries nowadays. In the 17th century, when the Netherlands was experiencing an economic boom, the country imported its wood from Scandinavia and Germany. In those days, you could see rafts on the Rhine River where the length of the high speed that were the sorry let me read that again. In those days, you could see rafts on the Rhine River that were the length of high speed trains that we see now. They were made of German tree trunks, heading for the prosperous Netherlands, who was building more and more things, including maybe some windmills, which are very, when you think of Netherlands, you see these big lazy windmills by the water, right? So until the 19th century, this made wood the biggest source of extra CO2. Extra CO2 other than what nature does by itself. If you look inside the rods, you will find that air bubbles from the 17th century, the period of the economic boom, contain just a little bit more CO2 than the ones when the knights were still around. KNIGHTS, the knights, which have more than once from the Roman era, which have more than once from prehistoric times. So we kept on increasing CO2 more recently in the 17th century, since the 17th century, but the increase wasn't too dramatic yet. At the beginning of the 19th century, only 1 billion people lived on the planet, 7 times less than it is now. We are in fact 8 billion now, and in the Industrial Revolution had only just begun. So here is a nice prehistoric man, maybe sitting and burning some logs and sitting on a cut tree as a bench, and here is a raft where the pirates and Vikings are going around, and here is a nice bear skin and a Christmas tree with a fireplace. Who doesn't enjoy all these things, right? In the meantime, the animals were going cough, 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 because all this CO2 and particles of burnt material were increasing in the forest, and the houses were being built, and the big armchair was being built, so big that you could easily sleep on it. Wood everywhere, wood to be cut down and used for everything. Nobody thought we were cutting so much wood that we were going to create problems. What happened then? Now even more power. Coal is here. James Watt's steam engine came along. Very nice invention, beautiful invention. You just pour some water and fire up the wood furnace or the coal furnace, and you can say, I can do that too. James Watt lived from 1736 to 1819, the engineer. And you can see the nice fireplace here, and you can see coal stored around here, and some warm boiling happening, cooking happening. Who doesn't like nice cooked potatoes and meat and so on, and who doesn't like a nice Christmas by the fireplace and so on and so forth, or a nice barbecue on the grill, etc., right? So we were not thinking, we were just enjoying life. We'll come back and talk about James Watt and the water vapor engine that started the Industrial Revolution and gave us everything we have now. We can't complain, we've had a good life. It's just now time to think, can we really continue this way? What can we do about it? What do we need to do about it? And what great things you can do as well, right? So this is your future. The future is yours. So you also have to get involved in understanding, which is where we are starting now. So see you in the next podcast with The water vapor engine and James Watt's invention of the steam engine. Okay, children,